About a year ago, I was watching this really fantastic video by Andrew Levitt where they went to the locations for Apple's wallpapers and recreated them in the flesh. It was a really cool video and it was really well done, and when I was watching it, I remember thinking to myself, man, that looks like a ton of fun. I want to do that someday. Now, unfortunately, since September 2019, two things have happened. The first was that there's now a global pandemic, so not exactly in a position to go traveling anywhere, but fortunately the second thing is that Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 has recently come out, which means that we don't have to go anywhere to go to California. Flight Sim 2020 has some of the most accurate depictions of the world that you could possibly find. It's absolutely breathtaking, and it got me thinking, why don't we go check out the locations where Apple's desktop wallpapers came from and try to recreate them? And so that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to start this video by recreating, quite simply, the easiest of the wallpapers to recreate, and that is the default wallpaper for macOS Catalina. Now, if we take a look here on the map, you'll see that Catalina is actually quite close to Los Angeles. So right over here, this is the point that Apple used. It's called Land's End. You can kind of see as I zoom in here, it looks pretty familiar. Now, what makes this so easy is, well, first of all, it's a very obvious point, and we know exactly where we're going. But, more interestingly, there is actually an airfield right up here, which means that we can take off and just fly right around. So in theory, all we should have to do in Microsoft Flight Simulator is zoom on in here. Oh, and there's the island, and this should be Catalina Airport. I should warn you guys, if anyone out here watching this video is really into flight simulators, I'm not. I've never played flight simulators before, so I still have a lot to learn. So don't judge me too hard if my mastery of the aircraft is not exactly up to snuff. Alright, so here we are on the runway, and I've never flown this plane before, but I have to say, I really like the interior. Look at this, like, sienna brown leather seats. We've got a fantastic view. This wide open cockpit should be exactly what we're looking for here. Alright, there we go. We'll release the parking brake, and let's get in the air. Alright, so here's the map. Okay, I am going the right direction. This is where we want to go. So we're just gonna have a pretty short flight to get up there. I suppose while we're flying here, I could tell you a little bit about the rig that I'm currently playing on. I don't really talk about my PC too often. It's nothing really special. Ryzen 5 3600X, 16 gigs of RAM, Radeon 7, which you might be thinking, why in the heck would I have bought a Radeon 7? I actually had it from the Mac Pro build that I did last year, so I just kept using that card. Then I've got a 1TB SSD, which you really need for the loading times on this thing. And obviously, for all the data that this game uses up, we are connected to Ethernet. So I have to say, the definition that they've gotten in the mountains is pretty good. I mean, you can definitely see a little bit over there in front of the wing, where we're still sort of loading some stuff in. Personally, I have tried this game on ultra and high detail settings, and it does look a little bit better, but I'm getting 43 frames per second right now, so I can't really run on ultra settings. Oh look, you see that over there? That is Land's End. The satellite imagery over here is looking a little bit odd. Definitely not the color palette that we're used to in macOS Catalina. We'll have to see how this looks once we get a little bit closer. That is our wallpapers. So I'm going to get a little bit more distance here, and then we're going to go into the showcase camera and see if we can get this thing to look pretty good. Alright, I've put the game in active pause mode because I want to go to the showcase camera, and we're going to unlock it, and let's just see what we can do here, shall we? Oh, wow. Look at that! That's Catalina right there. So we're going to have to get a little bit closer. Alright, well that is definitely looking pretty close, at least in terms of the angle. The shape of the rock is not quite there, but we sort of get the general idea. Now, what I'd like to do is try and play around with the weather system in Flight Sim to try and make this look a little bit closer to reality. So I think we gotta lift these clouds just completely out of the way. Okay, so now let's bring in some thin middle clouds. Bring those down a little bit. Sort of sun setting off to the right. Oh wow, that's starting to look a little bit better. That is pretty close though. That is actually kind of crazy. This is so cool. That is actually remarkably close to the real deal. So let's go ahead and take our screenshot of that. All right, macOS Catalina has now been photographed. All right, so for our next wallpapers, we're going to try El Capitan and Yosemite because they're actually really, really close to each other. Both of them in Yosemite National Park. You can see right over here, we have El Capitan, and Half Dome right over here is what was used for the Yosemite wallpaper. All right, so there's Half Dome. You can definitely see where that wallpaper is coming from. And then as far as El Capitan, which we can see over there, I think we'll want to take it from right over here at a lower angle. That should be pretty good. So why don't we go ahead and find an airfield that's near here, and then we can get up in the air. All right, so it looks like this is going to be the nearest airfield. We've got Kilo Mike Papa India over here. Let's go ahead and set that as our departure on runway 26. And then we're going to have to use our VFR map to figure out exactly where the El Capitan mountain peak is. All right, so here's our VFR map and where we are currently. Now, from looking it up, this lake and this little river here, they should intersect right like down in here. And then I'm pretty sure this is El Capitan, and then this is Half Dome. So this is where we're going to aim. Alrighty, let's get some altitude, put the flaps up, put the gear up, and we'll bank off to the right. I mean, just look at this game. It's unbelievable. And I get that, you know, once you get up close to stuff, sometimes it gets a little wonky. Sometimes water is weird. Buildings can look a little bit strange. But this game just came out, and realistically, you're meant to be viewing it from up here where we are. They probably didn't design this game thinking that someone would fly to El Capitan to recreate a macOS wallpaper. You know what? I think that is El Capitan right in front of us. It's a little low resolution when we're this far out, but I think that's it. Hopefully we'll start to render in some of the detail as we get closer here. But I would not expect too much definition, especially in the cliff faces, just because that's not really what this game is for. They don't really have that kind of resolution yet. You know, that rock face over there, not being the most realistic. That road down there looks a little perilous, let's be real. Active pause, because that right there is our mountain. So let's switch to the drone camera. Alright, I've pulled up my picture of the El Capitan wallpaper, and we're gonna try and get close enough here to line this all up. The problem is with this game, we can't really play around with our exposure settings, so by the time it gets dark enough to illuminate the correct part of the mountain, we're not really getting exactly what we need in terms of the shadows. Alright, I think that's as good as we're gonna get it. Not super close, but let's go ahead and take our screenshot. And then we'll hop back on our plane, unpause it, and we'll fly over to Half Dome. And there it is, Half Dome. which is looking a little worse for wear on the front. Okay, yeah, so obviously this is not a game that's meant to be inspected up close, because this cliff face has been absolutely murdered. Well, I mean, you can definitely see that it's trying to get some of this definition, but I just don't think that the detail from the scans is there. And in fact, it looks like these huge dark areas are probably shadows from the time of day that the photo was taken. And so you can see them kind of like halfway down the mountain. If we pull our sun like right overhead here, you can see that those like huge dark areas, like that doesn't make sense. Oh man, this is this is coming out. This is gonna be a weird video. All right, so clearly Yosemite and El Capitan don't look quite right. It's a little bit hard for the game engine to render these cliff faces. So I figure what we should do next is go to somewhere that doesn't have a sheer rocky edifice. So macOS High Sierra. Now I sleuthed around on some internet boards and I actually did find where this is. So here we are right now in Yosemite National Park. You can see there's El Capitan and Half Dome. And where we're now going to go is over here to the High Sierra Mountains. I've dropped this pin, and this little lake here, North Lake, is actually where we're going. It is kind of funny actually looking at these locations, because like, you know, when you look at the macOS High Sierra wallpaper, you just see this mountainside here. You don't realize that there's a parking lot like 20 meters off to the left. So this is our next location, and so we're gonna need to find an airfield. Now fortunately this is pretty close to Bishop, California, and as you can see, they've got an airfield, so it looks like we're in business. Alright, so here we are in the beautiful High Sierra mountain range. Now let's take a look here on our map, and hopefully we can find out where we need to go. So I believe if we head off in this direction, right down here, that should be North Lake. Let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, you can see that shape matches the map. And then there was also this body of water over here. So that's our target. Alright, so here we are. This is High Sierra Mountain. There's North Lake. Wow, that is starting to look a little familiar. Okay, so let's put this in active pause, which is fortunate because I wasn't paying attention and it looks like I'm about to eat it in this mountain over here. But let's go to our showcase mode. So right down there, that is North Lake. And that should be the mountain from High Sierra. In fact, this actually does look really familiar. You can see the mountain range over there. So we need to get right down to the water. Alright, I think that's probably as close as we're gonna get it. I have to say, I mean, the colors aren't quite right, but that's also because we can't really match the autumn foliage with this game. But I think the general look of this is actually pretty close. The shape of the mountains is pretty accurate. Obviously, we don't quite have as much definition and detail in some of the rocks, especially in the far-off peaks, but I think this actually looks pretty good. So what did we learn here today in trying to recreate these macOS wallpapers? Well, for one, this was actually a little bit harder than I had expected it to be. Part of that was due to the limitations of the game. part of that was due to a little bit of bugginess. My iMac has kernel panicked. Uh-oh. For example, whenever I tried to change the time of day and then try to change the month so that we could play with the angle of the sun, it didn't work. You could change the month, but then as soon as you changed the time, it went back to August. So that limited my ability to play with some of the angles. We couldn't play with the weather as much, obviously, as you would expect, given that it's a video game that's meant to be for flying planes, not for creating macOS wallpapers. But more importantly than that, I think it was just really cool that you could pick just random locations that aren't really of that much significance, especially when it relates to flying airplanes, and just go fly over there and check it out. It's absolutely unbelievable. Now, funny enough, while I was making this video, a friend sent me a link to an article on The Verge where someone else recreated the Big Sur, Catalina, and Yosemite wallpapers to, I would argue, a little bit more success. I'm not sure what they did to get it. The Catalina one looks really good. The Big Sur is pretty close, and Yosemite, well, there's really not a whole lot that you can do with the 3D scan of Half Dome. It's a mess. Now, to be fair, there was a little bit of post-processing going on in those images that were played around with in Lightroom, whereas mine were just straight out of the game, so I'm not sure you would necessarily be able to witness exactly the same images that he posted, but nonetheless, they did come out a little bit better than mine, although I think my Catalina one is actually kind of decent. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I have to say it was a lot of fun just to travel around and see the real-life locations for these wallpapers. So hopefully, if nothing else, you can take the information in this video and the map locations and nearby airports and go fly to these locations yourself. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of this experiment in the comments section below. Feel free to follow me on Twitter @LukeMiani and check out my subreddit, which is linked below. Also, be sure to follow me on my new Twitch channel, which I've also put in the description, and where I might do some streaming of Microsoft Flight Simulator. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.